To bring in an expert in Middle Eastern affairs and a former member of the Israeli parliament. Ksenia Svetlova is the executive director of ROPES, a regional organization for peace, economics, and security, and a non-resident senior research fellow at the Atlantic Council. Ksenia, it is really good to see you. So, former prime ministers, former presidents have been prosecuted. They've been convicted. They've even served jail time. But this is the first time that a sitting prime minister is facing trial right now and taking the stand. The prosecution rested the case over the summer. Reminder, this case began 4 years ago and ultimately culminating with something that Prime Minister Netanyahu has been delaying for many, many years. And his critics would say that he's weakened and really tested the judicial system in Israel along the way here. But you view this as a rather optimistic moment for the judicial system to hold, to show that everyone is to be held accountable under law. Walk us through why.
Well, first of all, I can tell you that, frankly, until today's morning, many Israelis were uncertain that Benjamin Netanyahu will eventually take the stand. There were many hypotheses about what can he do and what can he say in order to avoid this very unpleasant situation for him. Eventually, he's there testifying. And since he was denied to postpone, this stand, and he was also denied the right for postponing it for later hours, playing with the hours, playing with the dates. It seems that I think it's a powerful sign that Israeli judiciary is still standing. It is still strong despite the vicious attacks from within the government against the Supreme Court, the judges, the Attorney General. Many members of Knesset and many of the coalition call to fire her as we speak. But at the same time, everybody should be equal in front of the justice. And we see that by this step, by bringing Prime Minister to the court without, taking again, into consideration his many reasons why he should be exempted from that, he's still there. And I think it's a powerful system to every Israeli, powerful sound to every Israeli. Our democracy is still very strong, and our judiciary is still independent.
When it comes to delaying, I mean, obviously he's been accused of delaying the trial, but also even just prolonging the war in Gaza as a ploy to sort of keep himself out of jail and keep himself in power. But obviously, as you point out as well, time has caught up with him. Here he is having to testify. When you think about what the next few months and years hold, if he is convicted, he will, of course, have to resign. He may even end up going to jail. When you think about Israelis having to go through yet another election. I mean, Viana and I were just talking about how many elections Israelis have gone through over the past 4 or 5 years. I believe it's at least 5, if not more. What does that mean for political instability in the country at a time when you're juggling not just the war in Gaza, you've also got instability in Syria that, of course, Israel shares a border with. And then you've also got what's happening in Lebanon. Yes, there is a ceasefire happening right now, but it is extremely fragile. And so with all of that going on, I mean, the last thing Israelis need is more political instability.
Well, this is exactly what Benjamin Netanyahu says when he urges the court to postpone, to delay, and perhaps even to cancel the trial. And he said it today. I'm fighting on the 7 fronts. And this is what I need to do in the midst of all of this drama. Well, his opponents say to him a simple thing. If you're able to fire Minister of Defense, Yoav Gallant, in the middle of the war, and to replace him with another Minister of Defense who has less experience, who has actually 0 military experience, then you can also do the trial and you can also do the elections. Now, I'm afraid that it will not be happening so fast for the simple reason the testimony of Netanyahu, the cross-examination, all of these processes might take a lot of time. How much time? We are talking about years here. We are talking at least about a couple of years ahead of us of the continuation of the trial. And then there will be, of course, a possibility for appeal and the sentencing. So this whole process might take 3 to 4 years. This is according to Israel top legal experts. So we are not looking today at any quick, re-election or resigning of the prime minister. Theoretically, yes, this is what might happen. But since the trial might be dragged for quite some time, I think that we will go to the election before any of this will happen. And then Netanyahu will also have to live with the results. We don't know whether he will be able to secure another term as a prime minister.
Yeah, I believe his term ends in 2026, if I'm not mistaken. Ksenia, it's great to have you on, too, because you wear multiple hats. As an Israeli who served in Knesset, you can talk to us about this trial. You can also talk to us as a Russia expert and as somebody who actually foresaw the fall of the Assad regime, whereas many other experts around the world were blindsided by the lightning pace that we saw Assad flee the country. Now comes the question of what next, specifically as it relates to Russia's role and influence in the region. You were quoted as saying Russia has been exposed for what it really is, a power that overpromises but underdelivers. What can the United States, for example, use to its advantage in that type of situation right now, because things are tenuous here in the U.S. with a transition to another administration? President-elect Donald Trump has made it clear that he doesn't think the U.S. should be involved at all in Syria.
Well, and that might be very dangerous, because the only reason why Russia initially was involved in Syria is because of the power vacuum that was created there, since the U.S. was not interested for many reasons that, of course, resonate for many Americans. The decision to get a little bit of a distance from this, multiple Middle Eastern crises and wars. But in the end of the day, this is what allowed Russia to establish its bases there in the first place. So now when it's significantly weakened in the Middle East, I think it's really up to United States and other countries, such, of course, countries in the European Union and Arab countries. Let's not forget about them. They can play a huge role together as a coalition in stabilizing what used to be the black hole of the Middle East, a country that became a front base for Iran and served as a major land bridge between Iran and Lebanon and Hezbollah in bringing in the weapons. So if we want for these achievements to be permanent, meaning the weakening of the Iranian axis and also Russia basically leaving alone its client and running away. Now it's stuck with Assad, but without any possibly military power in Syria, which also projects to its opportunity to work and also influence the African scene, because Syria used to be a major hub for all of that. So if we don't want the return of what happened in 2015 and the return of Russia, of Iran to Syria, somebody needs to be there. And I'm not saying that it should be only the United States, but the United States is already there. It's playing a powerful role. And today, when we see that there is a major threat against the Syrian Kurds in Manbij area and Deir ez-Zor, perhaps in other traditional Kurdish-held territories, I think that basically there is no other element that can protect them, the minority, and also secure that Iran will not return to what it used to be, the dominating power within Syria.
Right. Ksenia Svetlova, thank you so much for being with us. We'll be right back after the short break with more.